The rain hammered against the windows of Marcus Blackwood's small general store, like angry fists demanding entry. He stood behind the wooden counter, tallying the day's meager earnings by candlelight, the electric grid having failed again during the storm. At 28, Marcus had inherited more than just the shop from his late father. He'd inherited the debt, the loneliness, and the weight of keeping a failing business alive in a town that seemed to be dying one family at a time. The wind howled through the narrow streets of Millbrook, a forgotten settlement nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. Most of the younger residents had already left for the cities, chasing opportunities that didn't exist here. Marcus remained, stubborn as his father had been, convinced that someone needed to keep the lights on for those who stayed behind. Thunder crashed overhead, so loud it rattled the old wooden shelves lined with dusty canned goods and basic supplies. Marcus glanced up from his ledger, listening to the storm's fury, when he heard something else, a sound that made him freeze. 3 soft knocks on the front door, barely audible above the tempest. He waited, thinking he'd imagined it. The clock on the wall ticked past 9 in the evening. No one ventured out in weather like this, especially not to visit his shop. Then the knocking came again, more urgent this time, followed by a voice so faint he almost missed it. "Please, someone, help." Marcus set down his pencil and walked toward the door, his boots creaking on the worn floorboards. Through the rain-streaked glass, he could barely make out a figure hunched against the door frame, trembling in the darkness. His hand hesitated on the lock. Millbrook had seen its share of trouble lately, refugees fleeing the conflicts in the eastern provinces, some desperate enough to take what they needed by force. But something about the voice stopped him from turning away. It carried a quality he recognized, the hollow exhaustion of someone who had nothing left to lose. He'd heard it in his own voice after his father's funeral, when the creditors came calling and the weight of responsibility nearly crushed him. Marcus turned the lock and opened the door. She collapsed into his arms without warning, a dead weight that sent him stumbling backward. Rain-soaked and shivering, she was smaller than he'd expected, her dark hair plastered to her face, clothes torn and muddy. He caught her instinctively, one arm around her waist, the other steadying himself against the door frame. "I lost everything," she whispered against his chest, her voice breaking. "I have nothing left. Please don't turn me away." Marcus felt her tears soak through his shirt, warm against his skin despite the cold rain that followed her inside. She couldn't have been much older than him, but there was something ancient in her grief, as if she'd lived through more pain than anyone should bear. Her accent carried hints of the Eastern Territories, where the fighting had been worst. "Easy now," he murmured, kicking the door closed behind them. "You're safe. Let me help you." She looked up at him then, and Marcus felt his breath catch, even through the exhaustion and despair. Her eyes held a striking beauty, deep green like forest pools, framed by dark lashes that were still wet with rain and tears. But it was the vulnerability in her gaze that undid him completely, the look of someone who had been broken and was afraid to hope for kindness. "My name is Naya," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't have money to pay you, or anything to offer in return. I couldn't walk anymore." Marcus guided her to the small chair behind his counter, grabbing a clean towel from the supply shelf. "I'm Marcus, and you don't need to pay me anything. When did you last eat?" Naya accepted the towel with shaking hands, pressing it to her face. 2 days ago, maybe 3. "Time feels strange when you're walking." He disappeared into the back room where he kept his modest living quarters, a bed, a small stove, and a few personal belongings. Marcus heated soup from a can and returned to find Naya still sitting exactly where he'd left her, as if she was afraid to move without permission. The sight made his chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. "Here," he said, offering her the bowl and a spoon. "It's not much, but it's hot." Naya took the soup with both hands, cradling it like something precious. She took small, careful sips, and Marcus noticed how she savored each spoonful as if it might be her last. He busied himself cleaning up the puddle of rainwater by the door, giving her space to eat without feeling watched, though he found his gaze drifting back to her repeatedly. "The eastern provinces," he said quietly, not quite a question. She nodded. setting down the empty bowl. The fighting reached our village 3 weeks ago. They said we were harboring dissidents, but we were just farmers. My family," her voice broke again. "They burned everything, killed anyone who tried to run." Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, not at her, but at the senselessness of it all. He'd heard the reports on the radio, sanitized versions that talked about military operations and insurgent activity, but never mentioned the human cost. Never talked about young women wandering alone through storms because they had nowhere else to go. "How did you make it this far?" he asked. "I hid in the root cellar when the shooting started. Stayed there for 2 days after the silence came. When I finally came out," Naya wrapped her arms around herself. "There was nothing left. No one left. So I walked west, always west. Because someone told me once that the fighting hadn't reached the western settlements yet." Marcus knelt beside her chair, looking up into her face. "You're safe here, Naya. Millbrook is small, isolated. The conflict hasn't touched us, and it won't if I have anything to say about it." She studied his face as if trying to determine whether she could trust him. "Why are you helping me? You don't know me. For all you know, I could be dangerous. Could you be?" he asked with a small smile. "Despite everything?" Naya almost smiled back. "No, I couldn't hurt anyone if I tried. I can barely hurt myself these days. Then that's all I need to know." Marcus stood and moved toward the stairs leading to his apartment. "You can sleep on the couch tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out something more permanent if you want to stay." Naya's eyes filled with fresh tears. "I don't understand. Why would you do this for a stranger?" Marcus paused at the bottom of the stairs, his hand on the railing. He thought about his father, who had taken in stray cats and fed anyone who came to the door hungry. He thought about the loneliness that had eaten at him since the funeral, the weight of carrying on alone in a town that was slowly emptying. "Because," he said finally, "maybe we're both tired of being alone." As he climbed the stairs to get blankets and pillows, Marcus heard Naya whisper something in her native language. He didn't understand the words, but the tone sounded like a prayer or maybe just gratitude for the first kindness she'd encountered in weeks. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the small shop, something warmer than the candle flame had begun to grow between two broken souls who had found each other in the darkness. The morning sun filtered through the shop's windows, casting long golden streaks across the wooden floor. Where Naya had spent her first peaceful night in weeks, Marcus descended the stairs quietly, not wanting to wake her, but found the couch empty, the blankets folded neatly with a precision that spoke of military discipline or desperate gratitude. He found her in the back storage room, sleeves rolled up, systematically organizing shelves that hadn't seen proper attention in months. Dust motes danced in the air around her as she worked, and she'd tied her dark hair back with a strip of cloth torn from her damaged shirt. In the morning light, he could see the full extent of what she'd endured. Bruise is fading to yellow along her arms, scratches on her hands that were still healing, and a thinness that spoke of too many hungry days. "You don't need to do that," Marcus said softly, not wanting to startle her. Naya turned, and he caught a glimpse of something he hadn't seen the night before. Determination. "I need to do something useful. I can't just take without giving back. You're recovering from trauma. Rest is useful." She shook her head firmly. "Rest makes me think. Thinking makes me remember. Work keeps the memories quiet." Marcus understood that logic better than he cared to admit. After his father's death, he'd thrown himself into the shop with the same desperate energy, organizing inventory and scrubbing floors until his hands bled. Anything to avoid sitting still with his grief. "All right," he said, "but we do it together. And you eat breakfast first." Over the next week, they fell into an easy rhythm. Naya proved to have a keen eye for organization and an intuitive understanding of commerce. That surprised Marcus. She rearranged the shop's layout, placing frequently purchased items at eye level and creating displays that made their limited inventory look more abundant. Customers began lingering longer, buying more, and several mentioned how much brighter the place felt. "Where did you learn to do this?" Marcus asked one afternoon as they restocked the shelves together. Naya paused, holding a can of preserved fruit. "My mother ran the village market. She said commerce was about making people feel welcome, not just selling them things people buy, from places that feel like home. It was the first time she'd mentioned her family without her voice breaking. Marcus counted it as progress. She sounds wise. She was. Naya set the can carefully in place. She would have liked you, I think. You have the same gentleness she did. Their conversations grew longer and more personal as the days passed. Marcus learned that Naya had studied literature before the war disrupted everything, that she could speak 3 languages, and that she had a sharp wit that emerged when she felt safe enough to let her guard down. She learned that Marcus had never left Millbrook, that he read voraciously to travel in his mind to places his body couldn't go, and that he'd been engaged once to a woman who'd grown tired of waiting for him to leave his responsibilities behind. Do you regret staying? Naya asked one evening as they closed the shop together. Marcus considered the question while he locked the cash register. I used to, especially after Elena left, but now. He looked at her, noting how she'd begun to smile more easily, how color had returned to her cheeks. Now I think maybe everything happened the way it was supposed to. Naya felt warmth spread through her chest at his words, a feeling she'd thought died with her family. Marcus had a way of looking at her that made her feel seen, not as a victim or a burden, but as a person worth knowing. It had been so long since anyone had looked at her that way. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same ledger book, and neither pulled away immediately. The touch was electric, sending sparks up Naya's arm that had nothing to do with static and everything to do with the realization that she was attracted to this gentle man who'd saved her life. Without asking for anything in return, Marcus, she said quietly, her voice uncertain. I know, he replied, his thumb tracing across her knuckles. I feel it too. Is it wrong? So soon after everything? Marcus lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her fingertips. My father used to say that joy doesn't dishonor sorrow. It just proves we're still alive enough to feel both. That night, Naya helped Marcus prepare dinner in his small apartment above the shop. They moved around each other in the tiny kitchen, with increasing familiarity, Naya chopping vegetables while Marcus tended the stove. The domesticity of it felt both foreign and natural, like remembering a language she'd once spoken fluently. Tell me about your father, she said as they sat down to eat. Marcus smiled, the expression softening his angular features. He was stubborn as a mule and twice as ornery when he was crossed, but he had this way of seeing people's potential before they saw it themselves. He gave credit to families when times were hard, never expecting to be paid back, but somehow always getting more than he was owed in loyalty and friendship. He sounds like a good man. He was. He would have adored you. Probably would have put you to work within an hour of meeting you. Marcus laughed. He always said the shop needed a woman's touch to reach its potential. Naya ducked her head, pleased by the compliment, but still unused to praise. I like working with you, it feels. She searched for the right words. Peaceful, purposeful, like building something instead of just surviving. After dinner, they sat together on the small balcony overlooking Millbrook's Main Street. The town was quiet, most windows dark, but there was something comforting about the sleepy stillness. Naya had pulled on one of Marcus's sweaters, the sleeves hanging past her fingertips, and Marcus thought he'd never seen anything more beautiful than this damaged woman, finding peace in his simple life. What do you miss most? Marcus asked. Before, Naya was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Sunday mornings, my little sister Kira would crawl into bed with me and tell me about her dreams. They were always adventures, flying horses and talking trees and castles made of clouds. She wanted to be a storyteller when she grew up. Marcus reached over and took her hand. Tell me one of her stories. Through tears, Naya began to recount. A tale about a brave princess who could turn invisible and used her power to help lost children find their way home. As she spoke, her voice grew stronger, more animated, and Marcus could see glimpses of who she'd been before tragedy reshaped her world. When she finished, they sat in comfortable silence, her hands still in his. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For letting me remember the good parts, for the first time since I lost them. Talking about my family didn't only hurt, it felt like honoring them, Marcus turned to face her fully, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. "They're not truly gone as long as you carry their love with you." Naya leaned into his touch, and when he kissed her, it was soft and careful and full of promise. It tasted like healing, like the possibility that two broken people might be able to make each other whole. When they parted, Naya rested her forehead against his. "I never thought I'd feel this way again. About anyone. Neither did I," Marcus admitted. "But here we are, she agreed, and for the first time in weeks. When Naya thought about the future, it didn't fill her with dread. 3 weeks had passed since Naya's arrival, and Millbrook had begun to feel like home in ways she'd never expected. The nightmares still came, but less frequently now, and when they did, Marcus was there with gentle hands and patient words until the terror passed. The shop was thriving under their combined efforts, and several townspeople had mentioned how much livelier the place seemed, with Naya's warm smile greeting customers. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. Naia was arranging a display of autumn preserves near the front window when she spotted the dust cloud on the eastern road. 3 vehicles moving fast toward town, their dark silhouettes cutting through the morning haze like predators stalking prey. Her hands stilled on the jar she'd been holding, and a cold recognition settled in her stomach like lead. Military vehicles, the same type that had rolled into her village that terrible night. "Marcus," she called, her voice carefully controlled, despite the panic rising in her throat. He emerged from the back room, carrying a crate of supplies, taking one look at her face and immediately setting it down. "What's wrong?" "We need to close the shop, now." Marcus followed her gaze to the approaching vehicles and saw how her face had gone pale, how her hands trembled as she backed away from the window. "Naya, what is it?" "They found me." The words came out as a whisper. "I don't know how, but they found me." The vehicles pulled into Millbrook's small town square, their engines cutting off in synchronized precision. Soldiers emerged, armed and efficient, spreading out to secure the area with practiced ease. Naya recognized the insignia on their uniforms. Immediately the crimson wolf of Victor Craven's mercenary company, the same emblem she'd seen on the men who'd destroyed her village. Marcus locked the shop door and pulled the curtains closed, but he knew it was futile. If these men were looking for Naya, a locked door wouldn't stop them for long. "Who are they?" he asked. "Craven's wolves, mercenaries hired by the Eastern Syndicate to hunt down survivors. Anyone who might have witnessed their war crimes." Naya's voice was hollow, resigned. "I should have kept moving. I should never have stayed here and put you in danger." Marcus gripped her shoulders firmly. "Don't you dare blame yourself for this. You deserve to have a home, to feel safe somewhere. Nowhere is safe from them, Marcus. They don't leave witnesses alive." Through a gap in the curtains, they watched a figure step out of the lead vehicle. Even from a distance, Naya recognized Victor Craven's imposing silhouette, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and cold blue eyes that had haunted her dreams. He moved with the confidence of a man who'd never faced consequences for his actions, surveying Millbrook like a conqueror planning his next acquisition. "There," Naya pointed. "The tall one with the scar across his left cheek. That's Victor Craven himself. If he came personally, it means," she swallowed hard, "it means they know I'm here." Marcus felt rage building in his chest, hot and righteous. This man had murdered Naya's family, destroyed her home, and now he'd come to Millbrook to finish what he'd started. The injustice of it burned like acid in his throat. "There's a back exit through the storage room," Marcus said quietly. "If you leave now, you can reach the forest before they surround the building." Naya stared at him in disbelief. "What about you?" "I'll tell them you were here but left yesterday. Buy you some time to get away." "Marcus, no." She grabbed his arm desperately. "You don't understand what kind of man Victor is. He'll torture you for information, kill you just because he can. I won't let that happen, and I won't let him take you." Marcus cupped her face in his hands, memorizing every detail. "Naya, you have to run. Please. For me." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I can't lose you too. I can't. You're not losing me. You're saving me from having to watch them hurt you, which would destroy me faster than anything they could do to my body." Before Naya could respond, a heavy fist pounded on the shop door. Marcus kissed her quickly. fiercely, pouring all of his love and desperation into the contact. "Go," he whispered against her lips. "Live, that's all I want." But Naya stepped back, her expression shifting from fear to grim determination. "No, I'm done running. I'm done letting other people pay for my survival. Naya, please open the door, shopkeeper." Victor's voice boomed from outside, cultured but carrying an edge of violence. "We know the girl is inside. Make this easy, and perhaps your town will remain intact." Marcus looked at Naya one last time, seeing the steel in her green eyes, the way she'd straightened her spine despite her terror. This was the woman her family had raised, the one who'd survived hell through pure force of will. He was proud of her and terrified for her in equal measure. With shaking hands, Marcus unlocked the door. Victor Craven stepped inside like he owned the place, flanked by two soldiers who immediately began scanning the room for threats. Up close, he was even more intimidating, 6 feet of carefully controlled violence, wrapped in an expensive military coat. His pale eyes swept the shop before settling on Naya with satisfied recognition. "There she is," Victor said, his voice pleasant as if greeting an old friend. "The little bird who flew away from her cage. Did you really think you could hide from me forever?" "Naya, leave him out of this," Naya said, stepping protectively in front of Marcus. "Your business is with me." Victor laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. "Oh, but he's already involved, isn't he? Harboring a fugitive, interfering with official business. That makes him complicit in your crimes." "What crimes?" Marcus demanded, finding his voice despite his fear. What could she possibly have done to justify hunting her across half the continent? "She witnessed something she shouldn't have," Victor replied casually. "Something that could prove inconvenient for my employers if it became public knowledge. Survivors have a tendency to tell stories, and some stories are better left untold." Naya felt Marcus tense behind her. She knew he was preparing to do something heroic and stupid, probably throw himself at Victor despite being outgunned and outnumbered. The thought of watching him die because of her was unbearable. "I'll come with you," she said quietly, willingly. "Just leave Millbrook alone." "Leave him alone." Victor's smile was predatory. "I'm afraid it's not that simple anymore. Your boyfriend here has seen too much, knows too much. Loose ends must be tied off." "Then take me and go," Naya pleaded. "You have what you came for." "Do I?" Victor stepped closer, close enough that Naya could smell the expensive cologne that couldn't quite mask the scent of violence that clung to him. "You see, my dear, you've caused me considerable trouble. Weeks of searching, resources expended, reputation questioned. I think some additional compensation is in order." He gestured to his men, who immediately began moving toward Marcus. Naya's heart stopped as she realized Victor's true intention. He was going to make her watch Marcus die before taking her away. No. She launched herself at the nearest soldier, clawing at his weapon with desperate fury. In the chaos that followed, Marcus grabbed a heavy wrench from behind the counter and swung it at Victor's head. The mercenary leader ducked easily, his hand snapping out to catch Marcus's wrist and twist until he dropped the makeshift weapon. With a cry of pain, spirited, Victor observed, holding Marcus in an iron grip. "I can see why you're fond of him, Naya. But fondness is a luxury you can no longer afford." Naya found herself staring down the barrel of a soldier's rifle, her desperate attack having accomplished nothing except to worsen their situation. Victor still held Marcus, and she could see the calculation in the mercenary's cold eyes as he decided how much pain to inflict before ending this game. "Please," she whispered, all her defiance crumbling in the face of losing the man she'd come to love. "I'll do anything you want. Just don't hurt him." Victor's smile widened. "Anything? How delightfully accommodating. Very well. Here's my offer. Come with me now, without resistance, and I'll make his death quick. Refuse, and I'll take my time. With both of you." Naya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of an impossible choice crushing down on her. In the silence that followed, she could hear Marcus's labored breathing, the soldier's impatient shifting, and the sound of her own heart breaking all over again. When she opened her eyes, they blazed with fury instead of tears. "No," she said firmly, "no more."